You ever see three cops get outsmarted by a grandma in a purple coat and a dog who could outthink half the precinct? Yeah, that happened. Right in the middle of Fairview Park, at the edge of town where the grass still holds morning dew and the air always feels like it's waiting for a story to unfold. I was there that day, watching from a distance, thinking it was just another slow morning until I saw them. Mavis Hampton, quiet as a sunrise, walking that old Belgian Malinois named Ghost, with a little girl trailing close in yellow boots. At first, you wouldn't think much, a grandma, a kid, a dog, but then the squad car idled up, and you could feel the mood shift like a thunderclap waiting for lightning. See, the cops, three of them, all swagger and suspicion, never did like anything that didn't fit the picture in their heads. They eyed that leash, spotted the military tag, whispered to each other about protest fashion and privilege cosplay, making jokes as if the world was theirs to narrate. But the thing is, Mavis had a presence that made you wonder who was really in command. She didn't speed up, didn't look back, just kept walking, every step telling its own story, while Ghost matched her stride, silent and exact, like a shadow that never forgot the sun point. One of the officers, the loud one, strutted up first, his boots crushing gravel just to announce himself, voice sharp as barbed wire. "That's a military clip, ma'am." He wanted a reaction, but all he got was Mavis's stillness, that look of hers you can't buy, can't fake, just earned over years of standing tall. The second cop, the bulky one, tapped the leash and sneered, "You walking this dog for someone, ma'am?" Sarcasm dripping, hoping to get under her skin. But Mavis? She let silence answer for her, as if she knew words would only cheapen the truth. Meanwhile, the little girl tugged at her grandma's coat, her eyes wide, whispering, "Why are they looking at me like that?" Innocence caught in a storm she didn't start. Now, Ghost, he was a different kind of dog. Didn't bark, didn't pull, just stood his ground, eyes flicking from the cops to the kid, always aware, always waiting. When one officer reached out and flicked the tag, mocking retired cosplay, you could feel the tension turn brittle, like the air itself was daring someone to break it. That's when Mavis spoke, low and even, "You should stop touching what you don't understand." No threat, just the kind of gravity that makes men pause and wonder who's schooling who. The cops didn't back down. The third one, quiet till now, hovered with a hand on a zip tie, the kind of gesture that says more than words ever could. Ghost edged forward, subtle, a living warning drawn in muscle and memory. Phones started coming out, bystanders filming, a live stream whispered, cops surrounding a black grandma and a military dog. What could go wrong? That's when the silence got heavy, every breath holding history, every glance picking sides. Mavis never raised her voice. She looked the loudest cop dead in the eye and asked, "You think silence is submission?" It landed like a hammer wrapped in velvet. The taser hummed in the second officer's hand. The zip tie glinted, threats lined up like dominoes waiting for the first push. But Ghost never flinched, and neither did she. The crowd started murmuring, someone called out, "Don't touch them," and the ripple was real, people deciding, in real time, who they were going to be when the story hit the news. A twist came when the little girl started to cry, not out of fear of Ghost, but from the weight of being stared at by the very people paid to protect her. Ghost shifted, positioning himself between the officers and the child, every muscle spelling "not today." Mavis, still calm, snapped her fingers, just once, and Ghost eased back, a lesson in restraint the cops couldn't buy on a firing range. Even when one officer tried to provoke, phone in hand, sneering about performance and choreographed tears, Ghost only growled, deep and steady, not a threat but a promise. Then came a distraction, a sudden slap of glass on metal, a windshield cracked by chance or fate, breaking the moment and letting everyone breathe again. Suddenly, out of nowhere, a military Humvee rolled by. An old comrade catching Ghost's eye and driving off in quiet respect, like soldiers saluting across the battlefield. The world shrunk to the patch of grass where presence mattered more than orders. And the officers, frustrated, embarrassed, kept circling, looking for an angle that wouldn't turn back on them. When one finally laid a hand on Mavis's shoulder, Ghost froze, locked eyes with the man, and didn't move, just waited for the universe to blink first. The crowd was growing, recording, commentating live. A voice called out, "She used to teach at Fort Bragg," and suddenly the narrative flipped. She wasn't just a grandma, She was legacy, command, a history the badge brigade never bothered to read. Even the female officer in the group stepped back, hands off her belt, realizing escalation wasn't just risky, it was dumb. Mavis turned, pulled out a single black glove, slipped it on slow, deliberate. "Walk," she said, and Ghost followed, the little girl at her side. The tension lingered behind them, but it was no longer theirs to carry. The officers hesitated, steps heavier now, realizing maybe this wasn't the play they thought it was. A man in the crowd, former military by the look, called it, "That's a perimeter containment arc, field pattern 3. Phone zoomed in, live stream split screen with old K9 training footage. Ghost's movements weren't just instinct. They were textbook, flawless, a doctrine no one remembered until that moment. Then came the real climax, a single touch, a miscalculation, and Ghost sprang into action. No teeth, no blood, just 0.7 seconds of pure control, redirect, neutralize, protect, disengage, putting down 3 officers like chess pieces without so much as a scratch. The world watched, replayed, analyzed frame by frame. The news didn't call it brutality, they called it protocol, and for once, the story wasn't about chaos but about the beauty of restraint. The aftermath was almost more powerful than the action. Officers stunned, humbled, one saluting Mavis without shame. The crowd dispersing in awe, kids whispering about the dog who didn't need to bark. The headlines called it the Ghost Second, a lesson taught by silence, by discipline, by a leash that never had to pull. Debates erupted. Was this training, or was this conscience? Schools broke down the footage, activists made posters, police trainers rewrote manuals. And in the center of it all, Mavis and Ghost walked away, not as heroes, not as symbols, but as reminders that real power never shouts. It simply stands its ground and lets the world catch up. By nightfall, as the last clip went viral, a new standard had been set, not just for police, not just for dog trainers, but for anyone who ever wondered where the line between force and justice really runs. So what do you think? Was Mavis right to stand silent, to let Ghost speak through discipline, not fury? Or does a world that only listens when things break need louder lessons? Share your take. What's the real weight of restraint when everyone else wants a show? Let's talk about what justice ought to look like, and who gets to decide when the leash is enough. You ever wonder what happens the morning after a legend walks through your town and leaves silence ringing like a bell nobody wants to touch? Because let me tell you, some silences echo harder than any siren, and Fairview Park never felt quite the same after Mavis and Ghost set a new standard that day. Yeah, the sun came up, people walked their dogs, birds squabbled over breadcrumbs. But if you looked close enough, you'd see the change everywhere. In the way folks watched one another, in how the officers walked their beats, in the nervous jokes shared by old men on benches who used to think nothing could rattle this place. That's how the next chapter begins. Not with a bang, but with the weight of everyone realizing the rules just shifted and no one sent out a memo. Word travels faster than light when there's a video to go with it. By breakfast, local news vans crowded the block, every reporter hoping to get a word from Mavis or maybe catch Ghost stretching in the morning sun. But Mavis, she wasn't about to give the press what they wanted. She just sipped her coffee by the window, the leash draped across her lap, while Ghost watched the street with the calm of someone who's seen the world try to chew itself up and still decided not to bark back. Inside her house, the girl, her granddaughter Zoe, now famous by association, sat at the kitchen table tracing the shape of Ghost's paw in her sketchbook, questions in her eyes that only children carry. Meanwhile, City Hall was on fire. Not literally, but in the way only politicians and brass can panic when control slips. The police chief called an emergency meeting, trying to thread the needle between public outrage and the wounded pride of his officers. "We need to review protocol," he muttered, sweat beading under fluorescent lights. "Retrain, debrief, re-establish order," as if saying it enough times would make the footage disappear. But nothing makes a story fade when every teenager in town already set it as their phone wallpaper. That afternoon, a twist nobody expected walked right into the precinct. A tall, quiet man in civilian clothes, carrying a battered duffel and a badge worn smooth by time. It was Master Sergeant Jonah Reed, Mavis's old squad leader, back from retirement in Texas. He wasn't there to stir trouble. "I heard what happened," he said simply, "and figured you boys might want a lesson in humility from someone who's seen more action than desk duty." The officers stiffened. Some rolled their eyes, until Jonah laid out Ghost's training records on the table and explained, line by line, what real control looked like. "You want to know why that dog didn't bite you?" he asked, voice even but sharp. "Because Mavis taught him restraint is what separates a weapon from a legend. You folks might want to take notes." Out in the park, the crowd grew every day, some hoping for an encore, some just wanting to touch a little piece of history. Kids left drawings of Ghost taped to lamp posts. Veterans nodded respectfully from a distance. But not everyone was happy. One officer, let's call him Travis, the same one who thought mocking was leadership, spent the next week stewing, watching his reputation shrink every time the story got retold. He didn't blame Mavis, not exactly, but he hated how everyone acted like silence was enough, like a quiet woman could change the world without ever raising her voice. Twist came on the fifth morning. Zoe, usually so quiet, vanished from the kitchen while Mavis was watering her lilies. Ghost picked up the shift in the house, ears pricking, nose twitching at the open back door. Panic didn't hit Mavis. She moved with a purpose forged in battle, her eyes scanning for details. The news crews outside, hungry for drama, barely noticed as she strode into the park, Ghost in tow, following a trail only he could read. Tiny footprints, the kind a child makes when she wants to prove she's brave enough to face the world alone. They found Zoe near the far edge of the park, crouched beneath a tree, hugging her knees, eyes wet but defiant. Travis stood over her, not unkind but angry in that lost boy way, holding her sketchbook. "You think your grandma's a hero?" he spat. "She made me a joke." Ghost stood between them. No sound, no snarl, just presence, reminding everyone what authority looks like when you stop pretending and start living it. Mavis walked up, calm as ever. "Give her the book, Travis." No threat, no heat, just command, the kind that makes grown men remember what respect tastes like. He did. He handed it over, hands shaking, the anger dissolving into shame. I didn't mean for it to go this far," he whispered. Mavis nodded, understanding something deep. Sometimes all it takes is one mistake and 1,000 people watching. But it's what you do after that matters. You want to fix it? Start by standing with us, not against. He stood there, searching for words, as Ghost nuzzled Zoe, the child's tears turning into shaky laughter. From that day forward, the park changed again. Travis started joining community patrols, not as a cop, but as a neighbor, learning when to lead and when to listen. Zoe's drawings ended up in a mural painted by local kids, Ghost front and center, Mavis in her purple coat, the whole town behind her. Not silent, not shouting, just present. Master Sergeant Reed hosted a workshop for the police and half the city showed up, learning that authority is a privilege, not a weapon. And then, just as the sun started to set, news came down from Washington. An official recognition, not just for Mavis, but for every handler and every K-9 unit who ever chose to hold the line instead of crossing it. They called it the Ghost Protocol, a new standard for measured response, restraint, and civilian dignity. Cameras flashed, but Mavis said little, just lifted her hand in acknowledgement, eyes on Ghost, who lay quietly at her feet. As the lights faded, people began to argue, some saying too much restraint would get folks hurt, others insisting that's what justice should always look like. Kids debated in school, veterans on the corner, parents at dinner. And through it all, Mavis just kept walking her path, Ghost always at her side, Zoe skipping close, the world around them a little wiser, a little quieter, and a whole lot braver. So now, it's your turn. You think we need more legends like Ghost and Mavis? Folks who lead without shouting, dogs who teach us to pause before we leap? Or does the world demand a louder answer when power gets abused? Share your thoughts. After all, maybe the next silence that changes everything could start with just one voice, yours.